Just tell them log in now.
All right, please. These are the next one. Go ahead, sir.
Judge, I would like to one other witness real quick by Zoom. We can log it in now. It just makes more sense chronologically, but I'm fine with this way.
That's fine. What's the name of your witness?
It's Detective Matino, Matthew Matino, M-A-T-T-I-N-O.
You sure you gave the right information? Are you relying on your assistant to provide that?
I am, Judge. I'm sure she gave the right
I don't know
information.
about that. I don't know. Let's check. Check her work.
Give him another minute to come on and can wait, I suppose.
That's here walking around public aimlessly most times. The child's trapped to her side.
While we're waiting for him, Judge, I did want to ask when, as the court knows, we're going to be hearing from multiple DNA experts. Does the court and does the defense require me to go through with any of the DNA experts an explanation of what DNA is, how it works, or?
I don't read that. I mean, that would be a predicate needed for purposes of admissibility at trial. I think the things that are more important and I'm looking for is the relevance of their results to what's going on here. We heard a lot of the word match, consistent. You know, that doesn't really tell me much.
Yes, so if it's fine with the defense, I'll skip through an explanation of what DNA is and just have given qualifications and move on.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Yeah, I mean, a trial, of course, you have to do that, but for purposes of no offense, but you know, you hear the speech once, you've heard it many times. Okay. He's on now.
Can you hear me, Investigator Matino? Mr. Matino?
You're going to have a problem with that. Just the bandwidth is very low.
Mm-hmm.
So he's in a vehicle.
Yeah. He's going to have to go somewhere that's better service.
And we just lost him again.
Well, we can proceed with.
Let me ask you something. Is this person, is it necessary to swear him or him in on the submitters? No. Because using the phone, it's just as good as.
As an officer of the court, I would recognize his voice. I've talked on the phone multiple times.
Yeah. I mean, do you want him to be sworn in for purposes of today's hearing?
No, we're fine.
Okay. If for whatever reason he can't get to a better spot, then we can give the phone a try. Just get a phone number from you, and then we'll do it through the phone. Okay. I think doing it from the car also is not perhaps the best location.
I said I agree.
They monitor in reference to scoring. I accept the fact that the state recognizes him. If we could still have him take the oath.
Okay, give me the phone number and I'll call. See if they'll answer. I feel like I'm following my way. Is this detective as a Matino?
Yes, sir, it is.
All right, your bandwidth is too low for our unit to allow you to come in, I guess.
Yeah, I'm trying, I'm sorry.
It's okay. So what we'll do is counsel, based upon the state's representation that they recognize your voice, will dispense with the necessity of formally placing you under oath. However, you are under duty to tell the truth. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to defer to counsel. If you want to get close to a microphone so he can hear you, that would be best. If you feel more comfortable coming up here, that also would be better. Can you all hear fine?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Holly, you okay?
I think I'm okay. I just heard you say hello.
Okay. So the next voice you will hear is Mr. Organic from the State Attorney's Office in Volusia County.
And for the record, Your Honor, I do recognize Special Agent Matino's voice. I spoke to him, I believe, the end of last week on the phone.
And we saw him briefly on the screen. So go ahead, you may proceed.
Can you hear me, Mr. Matino?
Yeah, fairly, yeah, I can make it.
You want to get closer, it'll be a lot better. That's what.
Mr. Matino, can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect, absolutely.
Okay. So where are you employed?
I am currently employed with the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. I've been there for the last 11, almost 12 years now.
And what division are you assigned to?
I am assigned to the tactical division or tactical unit.
And were you assigned to that same unit back in September of 2019?
Yes, sir, I was.
In August and September of that summer, were you tasked with surveilling an individual by the name of Robert Hayes?
Yes, sir.
And how were you surveilling? Where were you surveilling?
I believe the exact date was August 16th, 2019, when one of our homicide detectives, Detective Drake, put in a count request for our assistance to discreetly locate Robert and Mr. Hayes and collected DNA. That was back on August 16th. Basically in a plainclothes undercover capacity, surveillance operations, we call it. Myself and the team that I work on, which is 5 to 6 other agents, like I said, in a plainclothes capacity, did a background, tried to identify businesses, vehicles he may use, his residence, place of employment, stuff like that. They were able to locate him at 5500 North Flagler Drive, which is an apartment building. His exact apartment was number 6, which is on the 2nd floor. And that's where the majority of the surveillance operations took place.
I want to jump ahead to surveillance that was done on Friday, the 13th of September, 2019. Were you able, you and your assisting agents, were you able to surreptitiously collect some items that Mr. Hayes discarded?
Yes, sir, we were.
Could you just describe how that was done with the judge and collected?
Yeah, absolutely. On Friday the 13th, around 8 a.m., 0800 hours, my team and I, again, conducted a plainclothes undercover surveillance operation at his residence. We had knowledge that he was possibly going to head to our courthouse, Palm Beach County Main Courthouse there at Busy, for a court date. I believe it was in regards to a child custody incident. So we had previous knowledge that he was most likely going to show up to this court date. Arrived at his address, again, plainclothes. He ended up leaving the apartment, walked downstairs, and through our background, we knew that he usually used the Ubers to transport around the county. This time he walked straight out of the apartment westbound, literally, I don't know, 2 blocks, a couple hundred yards, to a Palm Beach bus stop, which is our county's public transportation.
And you had eyes on
waited there.
You had eyes on him.
Correct. Yeah, there was about 5 or 6 of us. We maintained a constant visual the entire time. Again, unmarked cars, binoculars, stuff like that. As he left his apartment, like I said, 200 yards-ish, maybe 2 blocks westbound, to the intersection of Broadway. There was a Comtrans bus stop. He looked like all indicators where he was going to get on the bus.
Okay.
The bus was not there yet. I was just north of him.
Did he go anywhere else in the interim before he got on the bus? Did he go anywhere else?
Yeah, right before he got, he stood at the bus stop for a few minutes, and then he ended up going into the corner store there. I don't know the name off the top of my head.
Did he?
Yeah, there was a little convenience store there on the northwest side, Winnet side. At that point, I had a couple of my other teammates wearing plainclothes in that parking lot. Did
he exit the store with anything when he came in?
Yeah, he exited the store with a beer can. Well, we later determined it was a beer can, but it was a beverage in a brown paper bag. Exited the store and went right back to the bus stop.
And what happened after he went back to the bus stop?
He drank, he downed the beer pretty good. And then after he got done drinking it, I think he got a visual on the bus coming, so he chucked it over on the side of the building, in between the business and the sidewalk. He also lit up a cigarette at that point, which he got from his backpack. And
did he discard that cigarette?
Yeah, took a couple puffs off the cigarette, discarded that right there, and it actually ended up going into the gutter right off the sidewalk or off the curb. The Palm Beach bus showed up. A couple minutes later, he got on. Another one of our agents, again undercover, actually got out of his vehicle and stood right next to him as if he was going to, right next to Mr. Hayes, as if he was going to join him on the bus or be another customer of the bus. So he was right there with it, arm's length, watching him smoke a cigarette, discarded.
And did you guys have eyes on this beer can and on the cigarette after they were discarded?
Yeah, absolutely. I had it, eyes on several other agents, and then I guess one of the agents I got out on foot with Mr. Hayes. The landline with me on the cell phone, and was chatting up with me while he discarded the beer can along the building, threw the cigarette into the curb area, the drain.
And did you and your fellow agents, collect this cigarette, this discarded cigarette and that beer can?
We sure did. As soon as he got on the bus, I immediately responded there. Using rubber gloves, latex gloves, plastic evidence bags, things of that nature. Retrieved both the beer can and the cigarette. The beer can was still cold to the touch. Same exact one that I witnessed him throw on the binoculars. It was about 3/4 of the way finished. Yes, retrieved both items and met with detectives.
And those are ultimately submitted to property and evidence.
Correct, absolutely. Yeah, I believe we submitted them to, I think FPLE, prosecutor ran up to you guys or ran up to go on.
And then actually the day before, y'all also collected a Heineken beer bottle, correct?
We did, yeah. We collected a Heineken beer bottle. That day he went down from his apartment and discarded a whole trash pail into the community dumpster.
Okay.
And so that was at his apartment complex in the parking lot.
And it was from that trash pail that you found the trash bag and found the Heineken bottle.
Correct, absolutely.
And did that complete your involvement in this case?
Yes. Collected the evidence, and that was about all we did.
And this was all in Palm Beach County, right?
Palm Beach County, I want to say it's Riviera Beach area, Washington City.
All right, thank you, Mr. Matino. The defense may have some questions for you to stand by.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Shea, do you have any questions for President Nemeth?
I do, Your Honor. Detective, did you have a warrant or anything of that nature? Actually, did you have a warrant to search Mr. Hayes?
No, sir. No warrants.
And the beer can that you retrieved out of the garbage, how do you know that's the same beer can that he came out of the store?
That was a separate incident. That was not the one he came out of the store. That was the day prior.
So you had two beer cans.
Sure.
Were you notified when you went out to surveil him that he was a suspect in a murder case?
Yes, we were reported.
I'm sorry, yes or no?
Yes, we were. We didn't have a warrant anymore. Everything was.
How long before you started surveilling him was he a person of interest?
Oh, I got the request. I'm not familiar with the case. I got the request on August 15th. It took us several weeks to obviously collect DNA and locate it.
No other.
Before you go away,
Yes.
I'm a little bit confused. He said he got a request to collect DNA on August 16th. And then he said on Friday the 13th. I don't know if that's the same month or 3 days before he got the request or a month after.
The request came to because of that, which I worked for on August 16th, 2019. We didn't collect on the 12th, we collected, or I, my team, on September 12th, the month after, we collected a beer can that was discarded from the department and the community dumpster that was on the 12th. On September 13th, 1 day later, was his court date, and that's when we surveilled up to the bus stop, and that's when we just went into the store, bought the beer can, smoked a cigarette, and discarded it.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was confused as to the dates. It made no sense to me.
Yeah.
But that,
Yeah, the one was at the apartment complex on the 12th. And then on the 13th is the one that we actually physically saw him hold the beer can or a cigarette, go inside, purchase it, and discard it at the bus stop.
got it.
Yeah, two different dates.
Got
That was on the one that I'm sure you're most concerned about is the 13th.
Okay, do you have any additional questions, Mr. Shea, for this witness?
I do not.
Okay, state, do you have any additional questions for Detective Matino? Detective Matino, thank you, Dr. for your participation. I'm going to hang up at this time, okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bye now.
Thank you, Judge, for accommodating.
I don't think anybody ever said his first name, by the way. I just got Matino.
It was Matthew Matino.
Matthew, okay, all right.
Now I'll call his wife.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Okay, now let's call your next witness.
Jillian White.
I do.
You have received.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your entire name and spell your last name for court reporter?
Yes, it is Jillian White, W-H-I-T-E.
Ms. White, where do you work?
I currently work with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement in the Orlando Regional Operations Center.
And how long have you worked at that DOE?
I've been there for a little over 19 years.
And what is your current position with that DOE?
I am currently the Assistant Quality Manager over the Biology and DNA Database disciplines.
And what duties does that entail?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
What duties does that entail on a day-to-day basis?
So involved with the quality system. So I help to oversee anything related to the biology DNA disciplines, help to ensure that the laboratories are still maintaining the standards that we set forth, that our audits are still being, we go through our audits, that where our quality of work is still met. I help to oversee and approve validations, anything that is associated with quality assurance, with specifically the biology and DNA database disciplines.
And over your 19 years with that DOE, what different positions have you had?
I started employment in July of 2002 as a forensic technologist with the biology section. In September of 2005, I was promoted to a crime laboratory analyst. In October of 2016, I was promoted to a senior crime laboratory analyst in the biology section. In April of 2019, I was then promoted to the supervisor, one of 3 supervisors in that same biology section. And then in May of 2021, I was promoted to the assistant quality manager.
So you were still doing lab work in September of 2019, is that fair to say?
I was.
Can you describe briefly for the court your educational background?
I have a bachelor's of science in the field of micromolecular biology from the University of Central Florida.
And what type of training do you have in DNA analysis?
So when I was promoted to a crime laboratory analyst, I underwent a formal 1-year training program that was provided to me by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement in the field of forensic serology and DNA analysis. Part of that training requires me to run several practical samples related to samples that I would typically test on casework. I take numerous written tests. I go through several oral boards in front of the technical leaders, supervisors to demonstrate my knowledge in the capacity of those fields. And then after I pass that, I then go into an extent of supervised casework where I work casework under the guidance of a qualified analyst. And that would then take a qualifying test to then complete my training and experience to then work independent casework.
And what type of training experience do you have in statistical analysis?
As part of that formal 1-year training program, I did take statistics from FDLE and learn how to apply it as it relates to forensic science. I also took a statistics class course as part of my undergraduate degree with UCF. I also took a course at the 16th Annual Symposium on Human Identification for Statistics given by Dr. Artie Eisenberg and Dr. John Platz.
And does FDLE have proficiency testing?
Yes.
And what is that?
A proficiency test is a test that is given to our members. For DNA, we are required to take it twice a year. It is a test that we purchase from an outside organization that has known expected answers. Obviously, I do not know what those answers are, but they are submitted into the laboratory. I'm required to work them just like I would normally casework. So it's not only testing my ability as an analyst to get the correct results, but it's also testing all of the standard operating procedures that we employ in the laboratory to ensure that those procedures are that we are getting quality work.
And when you were a lab analyst, would you participate in this proficiency testing on a regular basis?
Yes, twice a year.
Have you ever testified as an expert in the field of DNA identification and analysis?
I have.
How many times have you been tested?
60.
At this time, I submit what should be allowed to give an opinion in regards to DNA analysis and identification.
You wish to what here?
I recognize the qualification.
Okay, then she can express an opinion. What was your BS in?
Micromolecular biology.
Micromolecular.
Thank you. Ms. White, when did you become involved in the investigation of these 3 deaths? Fred Gunther, Juan Patton, and Jillian.
So the exact timetable, I'm not sure.
Just generally is fine.
Let's see. I don't know exactly the exact when I started kind of helping. I know during the transition of when the analyst who first did it transitioned to one of our other laboratories is when I kind of started helping out running standards and stuff. I don't remember exactly what time frame that was.
Let me ask this. When you said another analyst transferred out, had some testing already been done on items that had been submitted by the Palm Beach Police Department?
Yes.
And I'm referencing again these 3 homicides in 2005, 1 in 2005, and 2 in 2006. Who was the analyst who did the initial testing on those items of evidence?
Analyst Emily Booth Baran.
And when you came on the case, did you review the work she'd already done and the results she'd located on the items that had been submitted?
Yes, I had reviewed her data.
And I want to jump right into the reports issued by Ms. Baran in these cases. I'll start with a report that is dated March 7th of 2006, and that is in regard to victim Fred Gunther. Let me know when you have that.
Yes, March 7th, 2006, correct.
Are you familiar with the contents of this laboratory report?
Yes.
And among the items submitted from Ms. Gunther, did it include oral swabs?
It did.
And what was that item number?
It is Exhibit Q3.
Sorry, exhibit number, thank you. And did it also have fingernail straightenings?
Yes.
And what exhibit number was that?
Exhibit Q5, A and B.
Was Ms. Baran testing, did she identify any foreign male DNA on item Q3, the oral swabs?
Yes, she identified semen and from that identified a male profile that was foreign to Lakita Gunther.
Was this sufficient to be entered into CODIS at that time back in 2006?
Yes, she obtained a complete profile using the profiler and co-filer identification kits, which was at 13 areas. And then she entered that information into the combined DNA index system, CODIS.
I think this one, you mentioned the 13 areas. This would be a good time to describe to the court. How does that differ from testing that you can do now? How many different areas of identification with your kits now are you able to identify? So back in 2005, 2006, our amplification kits looked at specifically 13 areas of the DNA that's different and unique to each individual. It was 2 kits and the combined total was 13. And it also included 1 area to let us know if it was male or female. Since then, we have, through the process, we transitioned to Identifier Plus, which was 1 kit that moved us to 15 areas of the DNA, which also included that gender marker. Currently now, we use a kit called Global Filer, which is now up to 21 areas of the DNA that we're looking for. It also includes that gender marker and then gives us 2 additional places specifically looking for the Y chromosome.
Is the things you call area the same as what people call loci?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Well, let's talk about the Q5A and B. Was any foreign male DNA located by Ms. Baran on those items?
Yes, a limited foreign profile was obtained from that sample.
And was Ms. Baran ever able to determine whether or not that profile, that partial profile from 5A and B, whether or not that was consistent with the profile recovered from the oral swabs?
Yes, she determined that that limited profile was not consistent with or did not match the male profile that she obtained from Q3 oral swabs.
And was that form profile from the Q5 A and B, was that placed in the codes?
Since it was so limited in nature, there was not enough information for it to be searchable in CODIS.
Next, I want to move to the report dated May 12th, 2006, and this is in relation to victim Julie Green.
I have May 12th, 2006 report.
Can you just stop for a moment? I'm gonna make a note. Just stop for a moment.
Yes, sir.
And Counselor, just so you know, I'm not checking email or writing email. I take notes on the computer. Just want to let you know.
Yes, thank you.
All right. I don't even think I'm goofing around up here or something like that.
All
All
right.
All right. So now you moving on to what?
This is a report in relation to Julie Green, dated May 12th, 2006.
Okay. Bye.
Now, generally, in this submission, was it more or less a sexual assault kit that came from Ms. Green?
Yes.
And did this submission include vaginal swabs?
Yes.
And what submission, or what was that? What item number was that? Or submission number?
It was submission 1, exhibit Q8C vaginal swabs.
QH.
Q8,
Okay.
8C as in Charlie.
And was Ms. Moran, after her testing, was she able to locate any foreign male DNA on these vaginal swabs?
Yes, she identified semen, and from that she obtained, she was able to resolve a male DNA profile, a partial DNA profile at 11 of the 13 areas tested.
And was this sufficient to be entered in the CODIS?
Yes, it had enough information to be entered into CODIS.
And was this the same profile or a different profile from the one recovered from Laquetta Gunda in the previous report?
This was a different profile than the profile recovered from the oral swabs.
The oral swabs from Laquetta Gunda.
That is correct.
Now we'll move chronologically to the next report, dated May 18th, 2006. And all of these initial reports, the two we talked about, the one we're about to talk about, there's still Ms. Moran doing the reports, correct?
That is correct.
This is in reference to a one pack.
Correct. May 18th, 2006. I have that report.
For purposes of this submission, were vaginal swabs submitted from this pack?
Yes, exhibit Q3A was vaginal swabs from Iwanapa.
And was Ms. Moran, through her testing and analysis, able to locate any foreign male DNA on item Q3A, the vaginal swabs?
Yes, she identified semen, and from that was able to obtain a mixture, and she was able to resolve a partial foreign DNA profile consistent with the male, a minor foreign DNA profile from the vaginal swabs.
Was there anything notable about this profile, this partial minor profile that she recovered in relation to the profile recovered from the oral swabs of the Laquetta Gunda?
Yes, the information that she was able to resolve from this foreign profile was consistent with the male profile that she obtained from the oral swabs of Lakita Gunther.
I want to ask you, in terms of terminology used by the Department of Law Enforcement, what does consistent mean? What's that mean?
So consistent means it's the same, that there was not any noticeable, any differences.
That includes that report. What, over the years in this case, how many, if you had to estimate, how many buccal swabs were submitted to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement by the Daytona Beach Police Department or the task force associated with this investigation for comparison to these foreign male DNA profiles?
There were over 600 swabs.
Did it get to the point where you actually had to kind of tell Daytona to slow down a little bit or be more selective?
They needed to increase their screening criteria, correct?
To your knowledge, being the lead analyst on this case, up until the time that you did receive a CODIS hit, had there been any matches from any of those swabs submitted by the Daytona Beach Police Department in comparison to these profiles?
No, there was not.
Now, can you briefly describe to the court what a CODIS hit is?
Yes, CODIS hit is we utilize that database. It is a database where we put standards in or samples from crime scenes. Is what we're trying to do is help identify investigative leads between forensic cases. And depending on the level of information, the amount of information is if it will just be able to be searched within your laboratory, or if there's a little bit more, it can be searched within your state, throughout your state laboratories that participate. And if there's even more, it can then be searched nationally around with any of the laboratories that participate utilizing that DNA index system. So what it is it's just helps, it's an administrative way to help provide investigative leads to different agencies, just potentially help solve cases. And that's what it is. There is just investigative information that, and what I mean by that is even though I may say this, I have a sample in my case and it may match a sample in your case, maybe go, talk to them and pursue it. We still require that agency to go out and obtain a buccal swab to be submitted directly to our lab, which requires a chain of custody to be submitted in. So therefore, then I am testing a buccal swab to then do comparisons and provide statistics. So CODIS is really just an investigative lead, and we issue administrative paperwork to the agencies notifying them of this.
So for instance, in this case, Daytona Beach Police Department was notified when we got a CODIS in December 2016. Yes,
we notified them that there was a possible investigative lead between an agency in Palm Beach.
And the CODIS, for purposes of the CODIS submission and what it was from the Daytona Beach Police Department in those cases, was that the swab from the oral cavity of the quite young?
Yes, hang on, let me get to that report really quick. So the report that I issued December 6, 2016, it was in reference to the male profile, the foreign profile from the oral swabs of Lakita Gunther that was entered into CODIS. It had hit to a sample that the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office had entered into the database. So again, we were informing them that this is an investigative lead, that the same profile was found in both cases, and we provide the contact information for the agencies to get together.
After getting the CODIS hit in this case and notifying Daytona and Palm Beach County, Did you do any additional testing in relation to Ms. Gunther?
So from that point, what we did is, since new technology has come, when this original samples were tested, that was back in 2005 time, where the technology was just those 13 areas. Since then, new technology had come on, where we had migrated up to that chemistry that allowed us to now test 21 areas. One of the benefits of that is some of the locations or the loci in that kit allow us to talk worldwide. So we can start looking and searching Interpol, start looking more avenues. So at this point, we're really trying to expand the search. So at that point, I requested that the original evidence came back in, the swabs from the oral swabs from Lakita Gunther, so we could actually retest them with this new technology to try and get more information, if possible, to then be able to help us in our searching criteria.
And did you actually conduct that testing yourself?
I did.
And was that reflected in a report dated August 18th, 2017?
Yes, it is.
And were you able to extract additional information from those oral swabs?
Yes, so when the swabs had come in, they were almost pretty much consumed. So there was just little remnants left on the stick. So I scraped off whatever staining was left on the swab sticks and noticed that there was also staining on the inside of the envelope where the swabs were in contact with the inside, and used that and scraped the inside there, swabbed that, combined that, took it through the DNA process. And I was able to, and again, the only thing different is now I'm doing it with a larger kit. And I was able to get a complete form profile now at those 21 areas. They were still consistent at those original 13, so it confirmed it's the same, but now we just added more information.
And did you end up placing that, the results of that essence of the 21 loci into CODIS as well?
So yes, we just updated the profile that was there with the additional markers.
Now I just want to move briefly to, we're still on Lakita Gunther, a laboratory report dated June 20th of 2019.
Okay, June 20th, 2019.
You said July 20th?
June.
June 20th. And does this report reflect additional testing that again was done by you on the fingernail scrapings from Lakita Gunther?
Yes, since the original evidence that was examined was very limited at the time, I also recalled this evidence back in, which is the exhibit Q5AB fingernail scrapings represented for Lakita Gunther, to also go back and take them through the new technology.
And what information, if any, did you receive from that testing?
So with this, I again obtained a mixture which was consistent with 2 donors, which included at least 1 male. Lakita Gunther is expected to be a donor to that exhibit because it's a swabbing from her fingernails. And that at that time, it was suitable for comparison. And I did have a couple standards at that point to do comparisons to.
But still a different profile than the one that's recovered from the oral swabs.
Yes, it would have, it's different from the oral swabs, correct.
Before we go into your next round of laboratory reports in relation to this case, I know you're not an expert in the field, but can you describe for the court generally what your understanding of genetic genealogy is?
Yeah, genetic genealogy is basically, it's what individuals can do to kind of research their ancestry. It's just a way to use DNA to create family trees to kind of either direction. So Genetic genealogy just kind of creates those tree branches through the use of DNA and investigative leads.
And you can use a sample or a known, I guess, a complete profile if using the right databases to track down relatives of that profile, actually.
Yes, so they utilize databases. Individuals will have the technology, they have to have their sample analyzed with the technology that allows them to do that type of comparison. We don't do that type of technology in our laboratory. So private labs will run people's DNA profiles and put them into databases so people can compare and link their DNA and create their ancestral trees.
Now, who at FDLE handled the investigative aspect of the genetic genealogy done in this case?
That was led by Lori Napolitano.
Now, based upon this investigation done by Lori through the genetic genealogy, were new submissions made to FDLE to you for analysis and comparison in the fall of 2019?
Yes.
The first report I want to bring your attention to, and this is still quite a Gunther, September 13th of 2019.
Sorry, what was the date?
September 13th of 2019, Your Honor.
Yes, September 13th, 2019.
And what was the item that you received, Agency Exhibit Q22?
It was a brown cigarette with tan plastic butt represented as being from a Jesse Fleming's to be used as a secondary standard.
And did you compare the secondary standard from a Jesse Fleming to item Q3, the oral swabs from Laquetta Gunther, and item Q5A and B, the fingernail scrapings from Laquetta Gunther?
Yes, and he was excluded from foreign profile from the oral swabs and also excluded to the mixture from the fingernail scrapings.
Again, that's for Jesse Fleming.
That is correct.
When you say secondary sample, what do you mean by secondary sample?
So a secondary standard or sample is a buccal swab is you would consider a primary because we know that is collected directly off. A secondary standard is a sample that that the agencies may have witnessed them using, drinking from a cup, smoking from a cigarette, something that is discarded, but they don't take it directly like a blood or a saliva sample.
Next, I want to bring your attention to a report still in Laquetta Gunther dated September 14th, 2019. Next day.
Yes, September 14th, 2019.
What new submissions did you have in this case? Item Q23, Q24, and Q25?
Yes, submissions 14 and 15. Submission 14 was exhibit Q23, a Heineken beer bottle, and exhibit Q24 was a cigarette butt represented as being from Robert Tyrone Hayes as a secondary standard, and exhibit Q25, a steel reserve beer can represented as being from Robert Tyrone Hayes as a secondary standard.
Were you able from, let's start with Q23. Were you able to get a complete profile from Q23, the Heineken beer bottle?
The Heineken beer bottle, the DNA results obtained demonstrated the presence of a mixture consistent with 2 donors, including at least 1 male.
And what about Q24 and Q25, the cigarette butt and the steel reserve beer? Were you able to get a complete profile or secondary standard from those items?
Yes, I was able to obtain the same complete DNA profile consistent with the male from both exhibits Q24 and Q25.
And again, that's the cigarette butt and the beer can, not the bottle.
Not the bottle.
And with that complete secondary standard, we'll be able to compare that standard to the oral swabs or the standard recovered, I should say the male profile recovered from the oral swabs of quite a couple.
Yes, the foreign DNA profile that was previously obtained from the oral swabs of Lakita Gunther matched that profile that I obtained from Robert Tyrone Hayes from the exhibit Q24 and Q25 secondary standard.
And were you able to give any statistical ratio for that match?
Yes, that observed foreign DNA profile is greater than 700 billion times more likely to occur if that sample originated from Robert Tyrone Hayes, which at this time was exhibit Q24 and Q25 secondary standard, than from an unrelated individual.
And what about in regard to the profile recovered from fingernail scrapings?
Robert Tyrone Hayes was excluded as a contributor to that mixed DNA profile from exhibit Q5A and B fingernail scrapings.
As a result of the match to the oral swabs, did you request a buccal swab from Mr. Hayes?
Yes, I requested that buccal swabs be submitted from Robert Tyrone Hayes for DNA analysis.
And did you receive a swab from Mr. Hayes?
Yes, I received exhibit Q26 buccal swabs represented as being from Robert Tyrone Hayes.
And after receiving that buccal swab, were you able to confirm your testing and your analysis and your comparison done on the secondary standard?
Yes, I did, and the same comparisons, and they were consistent.
Was the same statistical likelihood ratio for the buccal swabs comparing them to the oral swabs?
Yes, so the foreign DNA profile that was obtained from the oral swabs Q3 from Lakita Gunther matched that to the buccal swab that I obtained from Robert Tyrone Hayes, exhibit Q26. And again, that observed foreign DNA profile from the oral swabs is greater than 700 billion times more likely to occur if that sample originated from Robert Tyrone Hayes, the exhibit Q26 buccal swabs, than from an unrelated individual.
A few more reports I want to cover with you, Ms. White. Are you familiar with Analyst Meredith McCaskill?
Yes.
And are you familiar with her work in this case?
Yes.
I should say in this group of cases.
Yes.
I want to go to a report that Ms. McCaskill issued. That is going to be on victim Awana Patton. There's a report dated May 4th of 2020.
Yes, May 4th, 2020.
And in this report, I want to draw your attention to exhibit Q3A, the vaginal swabs. So we know when you're there.
Yes.
Now, for the court's knowledge, this item Q3A, was that where a foreign male profile was previously found, the one that was consistent with the oral swabs?
Yes, a partial foreign profile was previously obtained from that vaginal swab.
And did Ms. McCaskill compare the DNA profile recovered from Robert Hayes' buccal swabs to the foreign male DNA located on the vaginal swabs from Ms. Patton?
Yes, the partial foreign DNA profile previously obtained from exhibit Q3A that Ms. Moran found in submission 1 matched the DNA profile from Robert Tyrone Hayes, which was the buccal swab exhibit Q26. And that observed foreign DNA profile, which was obtained in the vaginal swabs, was approximately 24,000 times more likely to occur if that sample originated from Robert Tyrone Hayes than from an unrelated individual.
24,000.
24,000.
There's another report from May 4th of 2020, but this is in regard to Julie Green.
Yes, May 4th, 2020.
Again, to go back to the earlier testing from Ms. Green, she had actually had a foreign profile found on her vaginal swabs that was placed in a coats. Is that right?
That is correct.
And did Ms. McCaskill do some testing, which is outlined in her May 4th, 2020 report, where she compared the known profile of Robert Hayes to that unknown profile in the vaginal swabs?
Yes, her comparison, Robert Tyrone Hayes, the buccal swab exhibit Q26, he is excluded as a contributor to the mixed DNA profile from the exhibit Q8C vaginal swabs.
Thank you, Ms. White. In the final report, this one dated, and again, it's Ms. Green, and it's going to be January 29th of 2021. Let me know when you have that report in front of you.
Yes, January 29th, 2021, yes.
This is also Ms. McCaskill's work?
That is correct.
And in this report, was there a new sample or known sample submitted?
A sample was submitted in a cross-reference case that she did comparisons to the samples in this case.
And was there a sample from Ryan Howell? I might be talking about the wrong.
Yes, it was a buccal swab from Ryan Howell out of a different FDLE case that was being compared to those vaginal swabs in Julie Green's case.
Okay, so that was compared to still that unknown DNA from Julie Green's vaginal swabs.
That is correct.
What was the result of that testing and comparison between the sample from Ryan Howell and the unknown male DNA from the vaginal swabs of Julie Green?
Ryan Howell is also excluded as a contributor to that mixed DNA profile from Q8C vaginal swabs.
And to your knowledge, and I know you've been in your current position, your supervisor, or your supervisor before, but in your current position for a couple of years, to your knowledge, has there ever been a match or a codis hit to that unknown foreign DNA from the vaginal swabs of Julie Green?
To my knowledge, no, and I don't know if any currently.
Thank you, man. Those are all the questions I had here. Are all vetted on this.
All right.
Thank you, Ron. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to go back to Ms. Barron's testing and her reports, specifically determined the date of March of 2013, where she tested the vaginal test from Ms. Patton.
From Ilana Patton.
Yes.
And can you give me that report date again, please?
March 2000.
I think it's March 7, 2000.
March 7, 2000.
Submission 7 Q3. I'm sorry, that was Ms. Conner.
Look here.
And there was a test done on this conference.
Are you talking about the report from March 7, 2006?
I am 2015.
2000?
What's the year?
2013.
2013. March 7th, 2013. I don't believe I have, let me double check.
I don't have anything in my notes that says that date.
Yes. I'll be on.
Well, do you have a copy of it right now?
I don't have a copy here. I just have my notes.
Oh, okay. There is a report from March 7, 2006 from Ms. Gunther. That was a submission to FDLE, and there was a report generated on that date, March 7, 2006.
Yes. Well, let's take a look at that one. It's the one where she tested to see if there was any semen in her vagina, and it came back negative. Is that correct? But you wouldn't know that.
So yes, so March 7th, 2006 report, exhibit Q2 vaginal swabs. Is that what you're asking me?
Yes.
That is correct. Semen was not identified on exhibit Q2 vaginal swabs.
And my notes indicate there was also a test on swab from her throat. Is that what's in the report?
The oral swabs
Yes.
from the mouth?
Yes.
Yes.
And what were the results of that?
Semen was identified on exhibit Q3 oral swabs, and she obtained a male profile foreign to Lakita Gunther at all of the 13 areas tested.
And then going forward from there, you performed the test. You took over the case on the package that was submitted to you, that was performed on her throat. In it, you indicated that you found some brown dried substance. Which you
So when I recalled the evidence back in, I observed what was inside the sealed white envelope indicated as oral swabs was 2 wooden sticks where the swab material was pretty much almost consumed. What I noticed is that the envelope, when you cut it open, that there was staining, brown staining on the inside where the swabs had been in contact with the inside of the envelope. And so what I did is I swabbed the inside of that envelope and scraped the sticks and took that through the DNA process.
And the point of my question is, even after all of these years, that was approximately 12 years later, there were still signs of semen.
Yes, the DNA, the biological fluid, it was preserved in there. So the DNA was still preserved for me to be able to do testing, correct?
And from that, were you able to determine with any kind of a scientific statement as to when that would have been deposited in this country's throat? In other words, her homicide dates were between the 24th to the 25th, that indicated that she may have been present there for several days before she was discovered. Can you give with any scientific certainty the time when that, the date or time when that sperm would have been deposited in her throat?
I can't give a time estimate of when that actually occurred.
And that would be also true of the sperm that was identified in Ms. Patton's vagina. Can you give any indication of the date or time that would have been deposited?
No, I cannot give any timetable of exactly when it was deposited.
So we cannot determine that it was concurrent with a homicide. Is that correct?
The only thing I can do is we can do the expectation of how long things would persist in a cavity, but I can't tell you any timetable of when it was deposited.
So without any scientific certainty, we don't have a time or date as to when that sperm would have been deposited in this country's throat or in this country's vagina.
No, I can just tell you how long I would expect semen to persist in those cavities, but I can't tell you when it was deposited.
Thank you.
Stand up.
I wonder if I may just-
Yes, sir, yes.
I have no further questions.
All right, anything else?
No redirect.
All right, thanks. She may be excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day. All right, you did not put the reports in evidence, correct?
No, Your Honor, I was going to ask the court if the defense wants to, we can have clean copies, we can have them submitted by stipulation.
I'll let you work that
That way
out.
we'll have the court.
Might make it a little easier on me. I try to keep up with the dates as I was going through. But it's
Yes,
hard.
so I have no objection. Welcome.
You can discuss it later on, but we'll have a record. Hopefully, Holly heard correctly. Okay. All right. So, you have no additional witnesses for today?
Not today, Your Honor. I've got 2 in-person witnesses tomorrow and 2 Zoom witnesses.
Okay. So we start again at 8:30. That works out for everyone.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we'll see you tomorrow at 8:30. Thank you. We'll be adjourned for the day.
Yes, Your Honor. Oh, yeah. Judge, are we going to be next door tomorrow? Are we?
Is that where we're supposed to be?
Yeah.
Okay. Then, yes, she's saying yes.
Okay.
Oh, I have to end it.